That February night in Austin, the heat was stifling, but even more stifling was the atmosphere inside the Ramirez home. Carmen, 42, had spent the entire day cooking to impress the new partners of her husband, Hector, 46. They had been married for 20 years, but the last 5 had been a slow descent into an abyss of indifference and contempt. The clock struck 9 p.m. when the guests arrived at the elegant house in the Pemberton Heights neighborhood. Carmen greeted them with a nervous smile, smoothing her navy blue dress that she had bought especially for the occasion. "Welcome. Please come in," Carmen said as she invited them inside. Hector took control of the situation, introducing everyone with the charisma he used exclusively outside the home. "This is my wife, Carmen," he said, as if introducing an antique piece of furniture, something that is there but no longer viewed with the same interest. The dinner passed amid forced laughter and business conversations. Carmen served the drinks, making sure no one's glass was empty. Every time she returned to the table, she noticed that Hector was already on his 4th glass of tequila. His eyes were beginning to take on that dangerous gleam that she knew all too well. "Honey, don't you think you're drinking too much?" she whispered discreetly as she served the main course. Hector looked her up and down with disdain and let out a chuckle that Carmen felt like a slap in the face. "Are you worried he'll say something inappropriate?" he replied loudly, making sure everyone heard. Silence fell over the table. The 4 guests exchanged uncomfortable glances while Carmen tried to maintain her composure, serving the mole with hands that were beginning to shake. "Hey, do you know something about Carmen?" Hector continued, raising his glass as if to make a toast. 20 years of marriage, and she still thinks I married her for love." The nervous laughter of the guests failed to conceal the cruelty that was about to unfold. Carmen stood motionless by the table, holding the tray with the last plate. "That one there," Hector continued, pointing to Carmen. "She's only good for washing clothes and cooking. Old and ugly like that, it's a miracle she's still with me." Time seemed to stand still. The words floated in the air like knives suspended before piercing Carmen's heart. The guests laughed, some out of obligation, others because they genuinely found the public humiliation of that woman funny. Carmen felt her legs buckle. The plate she was holding swayed dangerously. For a moment she thought about throwing it against the wall, about screaming, about demanding respect. But 20 years of slow erosion of her self-esteem had left deep scars. Instead, she placed the plate gently on the table and smiled. It was an empty smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dessert will be ready in a few minutes," she said in a voice that sounded distant, as if it no longer belonged to her. As she walked toward the kitchen, laughter erupted behind her. Among them, the loudest was Hector's. Carmen closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Something inside her, something that had been dormant for years, began to awaken. In the solitude of the kitchen, her hands clenched the edge of the counter until her knuckles turned white. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away with the back of her hand. This was no time to cry. It was time to feel, to record every second of this humiliation, because something inside her whispered that tonight marked a turning point. Her reflection in the window glass stared back at her like a stranger. When had she allowed life to turn her into this? At what point had she accepted being less, being worth less? With her heart pounding like a drum in her chest, Carmen served dessert on small plates and returned to the dining room, where the conversation had changed, but the pitying looks toward her remained. The party had ended hours ago. Carmen collected the glass cups scattered around the room, while Hector snored on the sofa, with his shirt stained with red wine and his tie untied. Her friends had left amid awkward goodbyes and looks of compassion that hurt almost as much as her husband's words. The silence in the house was oppressive. Carmen cleaned every corner mechanically, as if by tidying up the outside space she could also tidy up the chaos she felt inside. When she finished, it was already past midnight. She went to the bathroom and closed the door carefully. In front of the bathroom mirror, Carmen looked at her reflection as if she were looking at a stranger. Her reddened eyes, the expression lines around her mouth, her dull hair pulled back into a messy bun. Was this what Hector saw? An old, ugly woman who was only good for housework. "When did I lose myself?" she whispered to her reflection. Her trembling hands turned on the faucet. The sound of the water helped to mask the sobs she could no longer contain. She slumped down onto the toilet seat and cried silently, her head in her hands. It wasn't just the humiliation of tonight. It was all the humiliation that had accumulated over the years. Every time she had chosen to remain silent, every dream she had buried. Carmen remembered the 22-year-old she had been when she graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with a degree in fashion design and a head full of dreams. She remembered how she had carefully folded her sketches when Hector told her that a devoted wife didn't need to work. She remembered the first times he criticized her appearance, subtly suggesting that she should feel grateful to have him by her side. Wiping away her tears, Carmen opened the drawer where she kept her creams. At the bottom, she found a small wooden box that she hadn't opened in years. Inside were some of her old designs, yellowed by time but still vibrant in their creativity. She caressed them with her fingertips, feeling a connection to the woman she had once been. "Never again," she whispered to her reflection, "will I ever let him make me feel less than I am." That promise echoed in the small bathroom with the force of an oath. Do you think Carmen's words are enough to turn her life around? Write your thoughts in a single sentence. Would you be affected if you were in her place? Carmen stood up and washed her face. With her hands still wet, she untied her hair and let it fall over her shoulders. Then, in an act that seemed symbolic, she searched the medicine cabinet for a pair of scissors and cut a lock of her hair while kneeling next to the double bed. While Hector remained unconscious on the sofa, Carmen did something she hadn't done in a long time. She prayed. She didn't ask for miracles or for her husband to change. She asked for the strength to change herself. "Dear God, give me the courage to find myself again," she whispered through her tears, "to remember who I am." She lay down on her side of the bed, feeling strangely at peace despite the pain. Her heart was beating fast, as if to remind her that she was still alive, that there was still time. Before falling asleep, she made a decision. Tomorrow would be the first day of her new life. In the darkness of that room in Austin, as the crickets chirped in the garden and the moon dimly lit the lace curtains, Carmen Valdez began to awaken from a long slumber. What Hector didn't know was that his cruel words had not broken his wife. They had set her free. Dawn came with unusual clarity for Carmen. She woke up before the alarm went off and found Hector next to her, snoring and smelling of alcohol. Without making a sound, she took some sports clothes that had been stored at the back of the closet for years and left the room. In the kitchen, instead of making breakfast for her husband, as she did every morning, Carmen wrote a simple note. She was going for a walk. "There's coffee in the coffee maker." She stuck it on the refrigerator and for the first time in years, put her needs first. The Zilker Park was quiet at that time of the morning. The fresh air of Austin caressed her face as Carmen took uncertain steps at first, as if she had forgotten how to move through the world without Hector's shadow. "First time?" asked a woman in her 50s who was jogging energetically beside her. "It's so obvious," Carmen replied with a shy smile. "We all start somewhere," said the woman. "My name is Dolores, but everyone calls me Lola. I come here every day at this time." Carmen introduced herself. "And yes, it's my first time in a long time." That chance encounter was the first of many. Carmen began walking every day, first 20 minutes, then 40, until a month later she could jog for a full hour. Her body, numb from years of sedentary living and self-loathing, was beginning to awaken. At home, Hector hardly noticed the changes. He continued to come home late from work, expecting to find dinner ready and Carmen ready to listen to his complaints about his day. She continued to do the housework, but something had changed in her gaze, in the way she moved around the house, as if it no longer contained her completely. One afternoon, while Hector was on a business trip to Cancun, Carmen made an impulsive decision. She walked into the South Congress Beauty Salon in downtown Austin, a small but cozy place. "I want a change," she told Marissa, the stylist, a cheerful woman with brightly colored hair. "How radical?" asked Marissa, assessing Carmen's long, shapeless hair. "Completely radical." 2 hours later, Carmen left the salon with a modern cut that framed her face, copper highlights that illuminated her complexion, and a feeling of lightness that went beyond having lost several inches of hair. On her way home, She passed by the University of Texas at Austin, where she had studied so many years ago. A poster caught her attention. Refresher course in fashion design. Duration, 3 months. Without thinking twice, she entered the building to ask for information. Registration closes tomorrow, the secretary informed her. Classes are on Saturdays from 9 to 2. Carmen remembered that Hector played golf with his friends on Saturdays, so he would never notice her absence. With trembling hands, she filled out the application and paid the tuition with the money she had been secretly saving from the grocery budget. That night, in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, Carmen really looked at herself for the first time in years. The changes were subtle, but undeniable. Her posture was straighter, her skin had a healthier color thanks to exercise, and her hair framed a face that was beginning to remember how to smile genuinely. She picked up her phone, and after hesitating for a moment, created a new Instagram account with the name Renata and Austin. She uploaded a photo of her new haircut with the caption, "Sometimes the greatest act of courage is remembering who you were before the world convinced you to be less. If you support this courage, like the video, the moment of breaking is coming soon." She didn't expect anyone to see it, but she needed to document this moment. The next morning, as she was making breakfast, Hector walked into the kitchen and stopped short when he saw her. "What the hell did you do to your hair?" he asked, frowning. Carmen took a deep breath before answering. The old fear tried to take hold of her, but she pushed it aside. "I cut my hair," she replied simply, placing a plate of eggs in front of him. "I needed a change." "You look ridiculous," Hector muttered, tshittered, picking up the newspaper. "At your age, you should accept that you're no longer suited to those youthful styles." The words hurt, but less than before. Carmen poured coffee into 2 cups and sat down across from him, something she rarely did during breakfast. "This Saturday, I'm starting a course," she announced in a firm voice. "Fashion design, an update on what I studied before we got married." Hector looked at her over the newspaper, somewhere between surprised and annoyed. "And the house? Who will cook?" "I'll leave everything ready," she replied. "It's only a few hours on Saturdays." He studied her for a moment as if she were a stranger, but then returned to his newspaper with indifference. "Do what you want," he finally said, "as long as you don't neglect your obligations." Carmen nodded, hiding the small victory she felt inside. What Hector didn't know, what he couldn't imagine, was that this was only the beginning of a much deeper change. As he continued reading news about the world, he didn't realize that Carmen's world was transforming right under his nose. 4 months had passed since that fateful night. The Austin summer embraced the city with its characteristic heat, but Carmen no longer felt suffocated by it. On the contrary, she seemed to blossom with each passing day. The fashion design course had become her refuge. Every Saturday, while Hector played golf at the Barton Creek Country Club, she was reborn among fabrics, patterns, and the camaraderie of people who shared her passion. Her teacher, Mariana Fuentes, had noticed her talent from the very first class. "You have a gift, Carmen," she told her one afternoon after reviewing her designs. "I don't understand why you let it lie dormant for so long." Carmen smiled wistfully. She could have told her about a marriage that had slowly devoured her dreams, but she preferred to focus on the present. "The important thing is that it's awake now," she replied, looking at the sketch she had been working on. An elegant but comfortable dress, designed for real women, not mannequins. Her morning walks with Lola had become routine. Now they jogged 500 kilometers together every day, and Carmen had lost 15 kilos. Her body felt stronger, more like her own. The loose-fitting clothes she used to wear to hide her figure were replaced by garments she had altered herself to highlight her new silhouette. Her Instagram account, which had started as a personal diary, now had over 3,000 followers. Women from all over Latin America identified with her story of transformation, which she shared without mentioning the most painful details of her marriage. "Reborn at 42" had become her motto. Hector had barely noticed the changes. When he was at home, which was less and less often, he continued to treat her with the same mixture of indifference and disdain. Dinner was still served on time, the house was spotless, and his shirts were ironed here. But now these acts of service no longer defined Carmen. They were simply tasks she performed while her real life flourished elsewhere. One hot August afternoon, Carmen attended the final presentation of the course. Each student had to show their collection to a small audience of teachers and some special guests from the local fashion world. With her heart pounding, Carmen presented Renatzer, a collection of 5 pieces inspired by her own transformation. These garments are designed for women who have forgotten their own worth and are remembering who they really are, she explained in front of the small auditorium. In the audience, a man in his mid-40s watched her with particular interest. When the presentation was over, he approached her as she was gathering her designs. "Carmen Valdez, is that you?" he asked with a warm smile. She looked at him confused until the memory hit her like a wave. Alex Mendez, her college classmate, her first love before she met Hector. "Alex, I can't believe it," she exclaimed in surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I'm one of the special guests," he explained with a smile. "I have a clothing brand in Los Angeles, but we're expanding to the peninsula. Mariana invited me to look for local talent." Time seemed to vanish as they talked. Alex told her about his career as a designer and entrepreneur, about his divorce 5 years ago, about how he had built his authentic brand with the goal of celebrating the beauty of real women. "Your designs are extraordinary, Carmen," he said sincerely. "They have soul, they have purpose, exactly what I always look for in my brand." Carmen felt her face flush at the genuine compliment, something she hadn't received in so long. "Thank you. It means a lot coming from you." They exchanged numbers, and when Carmen got home that night, she felt like she was floating. Hector was on the couch watching a soccer game with a beer in his hand. "Where were you?" he asked without looking away from the screen. "At the final presentation for my course," she replied, leaving her portfolio on the table. "I mentioned it to you this morning." Hector grunted something unintelligible and continued watching the game. Carmen went to the kitchen to prepare a light dinner, feeling strangely calm in the face of her husband's indifference. Before, she would have desperately tried to get his attention, tell him about her day, seek his approval. Now she simply let the silence exist between them. Like a wall, she no longer tried to climb. Her phone vibrated with a message. "It was a pleasure to meet you again, Carmen. I was serious about your designs. We could meet next week to discuss a possible collaboration. Alex." Her heart skipped a beat. A collaboration with an established brand. This was more than she had dreamed of when she started the course. With trembling fingers, she replied, "I'd love to. Tell me, when and where." That night, in front of the bathroom mirror, Carmen looked at herself with new eyes. She was no longer the broken woman she had been 4 months ago. Her body was more toned, her hair was now short and shiny, but above all, her eyes. There was life in them. There was fire. There was purpose. For the first time in more than a decade, she felt beautiful. Not because someone had told her so, although Alex's words had warmed her heart, but because she was beginning to see herself clearly, to recognize her own worth beyond Hector's gaze. "This is just the beginning," she whispered to her reflection with a knowing smile. What Carmen didn't know was that this reunion with Alex would not only open professional doors, but would also be the catalyst for the most significant change of all. Autumn arrived in Austin with its golden afternoons and cooler nights. 2 months had passed since Carmen had reconnected with Alex, and her life had transformed at a pace that sometimes frightened her and sometimes excited her. The collaboration Alex had proposed to her materialized in a project called Mujeres Auténticas, Authentic Women, a capsule collection within his brand that celebrated the beauty of women of different ages and body types. Carmen had designed 7 versatile pieces that could be adapted to different silhouettes, and Alex was impressed with her talent. "Your sensitivity is unique, Carmen," he told her one afternoon as they reviewed the prototypes in the small studio they had set up in a downtown hotel in Austin. "You design from empathy, from a deep understanding of what a woman needs to feel beautiful and comfortable at the same time." Working with Alex was like breathing fresh air after years of confinement. He valued her opinions, celebrated her ideas, treated her as an equal. Their friendship had blossomed naturally, rekindling emotions that Carmen thought were long forgotten. At home, the situation with Hector had become increasingly distant. Carmen no longer tried to constantly please him or seek his approval. She continued to fulfill her domestic responsibilities, but now she did so on her own terms, organizing her time so that she could also devote herself to her reborn career. One night, as they ate dinner in silence, Hector finally seemed to really notice the changes in his wife. "You've lost weight," he commented, looking at her over his plate of chiles rellenos. 23 kilojoules, Carmen replied, with a small smile. "I've been exercising every morning for months." Hector looked at her with an expression Carmen couldn't quite identify. Surprise, confusion, a flash of regret. "Maybe you look different," he finally admitted. "I am different," she confirmed, holding his gaze for the first time in years without feeling afraid. "The design course opened doors that I thought were closed forever." Hector frowned, as if remembering something unpleasant. That little Saturday course. What doors could it open for you? For you at your age? Carmen took a deep breath before answering. She felt the old insecurity trying to climb up her throat, but she pushed it down. "I'm collaborating with a national fashion brand. My first collection will be out in 2 months, she said in a calm but firm voice. "And I just signed a contract as an associate designer." Hector's expression went from disbelief to disdain. "They would hire a 42-year-old woman with no experience?" he asked with a mocking laugh. "It's probably some con artist taking advantage of desperate women like you." The words were designed to hurt, to sow doubt, as he had done so many times before. But this time Carmen had something she didn't have before: certainty of her own worth. "His name is Alex Mendez," she replied calmly. "He's the founder of Authentica. You can look him up on the internet if you don't believe me." Hector took out his phone and searched for the name. His expression gradually changed as he read about the successful designer and entrepreneur. "How did you meet him?" he asked suspiciously. "We were classmates in college before we got married," Carmen explained. "He came as a special guest to the final presentation of the course. And now you work for him." Hector's gaze had become more intense, more calculating. "Or is there something else I should know?" Carmen felt herself blushing, but not out of embarrassment, but out of indignation. The insinuation was clear. "I work with him, not for him," she clarified firmly. "And what we have between us is mutual respect and professional admiration." Hector studied her for a moment longer, as if evaluating this new version of his wife that seemed to have come out of nowhere. Finally, he returned to his dinner. "Well, as long as you don't neglect the house, I suppose it's okay," he conceded, as if he were doing her a favor. "It might even be useful for my business contacts to have a wife who designs clothes." Carmen didn't respond. The conversation was over, but something fundamental had changed. For the first time, Hector seemed to really see her, even if it was through the filter of his own interest. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. The collection at Mujeres Auténticas was almost ready for launch, and Carmen divided her time between the studio with Alex and her home, where Hector was beginning to look at her with new eyes, a strange mixture of renewed desire and suspicion. One afternoon, after a particularly successful day at the studio, Alex invited her to dinner. "Let's celebrate that we've finished the last details," he proposed with a smile. "I know a wonderful place on Paseo de Pemberton Heights." Carmen hesitated. Until now, all their meetings had been strictly professional, always at the studio or in cafes for lunch. "I don't know, Alex," she began. "It's just dinner, Carmen," he said, understanding her hesitation. Between friends who have worked hard and deserve to celebrate. Something in Alex's gaze, in the way he respected her boundaries without pressuring her, made Carmen accept. The restaurant was elegant but cozy, with an interior courtyard filled with tropical vegetation and dim lights. As they dined, the conversation flowed with the ease they had always shared, from stories of their college years to dreams for the future. "I never understood why we stopped talking when you started dating Hector," Alex commented as they shared a tres leches dessert. Carmen looked down at her plate. He didn't approve of her male friendships. She answered honestly, "And I was so in love that I didn't question his jealousy." Alex nodded understandingly and now asked gently, "Are you still so in love?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibilities. Carmen looked up and found Alex's eyes warm and expectant. "Now I'm learning to love myself first," she finally replied. "And that's changing everything else." The evening progressed with deep conversations and genuine laughter. When Alex drove her home, he stopped a block away at Carmen's request. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," she said sincerely. "Thank you, Carmen," he replied, "for trusting me, for sharing your talent, for being exactly who you are." There was a moment of tension, an instant where they both seemed to lean toward each other, but Carmen pulled back slightly. "Good night, Alex," she said softly. "Good night, Carmen," he replied, respecting her decision without pressuring her. Walking home under the starry sky of Austin, Carmen felt her heart beating fast. It wasn't just the attraction that undoubtedly existed between her and Alex. It was the feeling of being alive again, of feeling desired not as an object or a possession, but as a complete woman, with a mind, a heart, and talent. When she entered the house, she found Hector awake, waiting for her in the living room with a somber expression. "Where were you?" he asked in a controlled voice. "Having dinner with Alex," Carmen replied sincerely. "We were celebrating the completion of the collection." Hector got up from the sofa and approached her. Carmen instinctively took a step back, a reflex from years of subtle intimidation. "You look beautiful," he said, surprising her. "Did you design that dress?" Carmen nodded, confused by the change in his tone. "I like how it looks on you," Hector continued, moving closer. "You've always been beautiful, Carmen. I just sometimes forget." He tried to kiss her, but Carmen turned her face slightly, offering him her cheek instead of her lips. Hector's eyes darkened. "Is it him?" he asked tensely. "Are you having an affair with your boss?" "He's not my boss. He's my partner," Carmen corrected firmly. "And no, I'm not having an affair, but I'm also not willing to pretend that everything is fine between us." Hector recoiled as if she had slapped him. "What are you talking about? What have I done to deserve this rejection?" The question was so absurd, so disconnected from the reality of their 20 years of marriage, that Carmen couldn't help but let out an incredulous laugh. "Seriously? You're asking me that?" she replied. "Have you forgotten how you humiliated me in front of your friends just 6 months ago? How you've treated me for years?" Hector seemed genuinely confused. "I was just joking that night," he defended himself. "You can't still be upset about something so silly." Carmen shook her head, recognizing the familiar pattern. Minimize, deny, turn the situation around to make it seem rational. "It's not trivial to me," she said simply. "And it's not just that night. It's every day for the last 15 years. She headed to the bedroom, leaving Hector in the living room for the first time without the right words to manipulate the situation to his advantage. The power between them had shifted, and they both knew it. That night, as she removed her makeup in front of the mirror, Carmen looked into her own eyes and knew she had reached a point of no return. She was no longer the same woman who had endured years of belittlement. She no longer needed Hector's approval to feel valuable. The collection launch would be in 3 weeks, and after that she would have to make a decision about her future. A future that, for the first time in decades, she could imagine as bright and full of possibilities, with or without Hector by her side. Before continuing, we want to know more about you. Where are you listening from? Leave us a comment with the name of your city or country. We would love to know how far our stories are reaching. The big day had arrived. The Austin Convention Center was aglow with lights and elegant decorations for the launch of the Authentic Women collection. Carmen nervously walked around the venue, checking every detail. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the rest of this journey. An unexpected confrontation is coming soon. The real women models of different ages and non-professional bodies. The music, the lighting. "Everything is perfect, Carmen," said Alex, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. "Relax a little. Tonight is for celebrating." She accepted the glass with trembling hands. She was wearing one of her own creations, a turquoise pantsuit and blouse that highlighted her renewed figure and cinnamon skin. Her hair, now with copper highlights, was styled in soft waves that framed her face. "I still can't believe this is happening," Carmen confessed. "Sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to wake up and it will all have been a dream." Alex looked at her tenderly. "It's not a dream, Carmen. You've earned it with your talent and hard work." The room began to fill with guests, local journalists, figures from the Yucatecan fashion world. important clients of the Authentica brand, and, to Carmen's surprise, several of her Instagram followers who had won tickets through a contest. Among the crowd, Carmen spotted a familiar face she hadn't expected to see. Maricela, the wife of one of Hector's partners, one of the women who had been present on that fateful night. Maricela greeted Carmen, approaching her with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "I didn't expect to see you here, Carmen. You look spectacular," Maricela exclaimed, genuinely surprised. "I saw on social media that you were part of this event, but I couldn't believe it until I saw you with my own eyes." Before Carmen could respond, a male voice joined the conversation. "She certainly looks unrecognizable, doesn't she?" Hector was there dressed in his best suit, holding a glass of champagne and looking at his wife as if it were the first time he had ever really seen her. "Carmen," Hector said, unable to hide his surprise. "I wouldn't miss my talented wife's debut," he replied with a calculated smile. "Of course not. I'm very proud of you, honey." The term of endearment sounded strange, almost forced. Carmen noticed how Hector scanned the room, evaluating those present, gauging the importance of the event. When his gaze stopped on Alex, who was talking to some journalists a few meters away, his smile tightened. "So that's your famous partner," he commented quietly. Carmen nodded, unable to decipher her husband's expression. "Alex is a highly respected designer," she said calmly. "I am very grateful to him for the opportunity he has given me." Before Hector could respond, the lights dimmed and a spotlight illuminated the center of the room. The fashion show was about to begin. "I have to go," Carmen excused herself. "Please enjoy the event." The fashion show was a resounding success. The 7 pieces designed by Carmen, modeled by ordinary women with real stories, captured the essence of what she had wanted to convey. Authentic beauty, confidence, liberation. Each garment told a story of rebirth, just like hers. When all the models had finished their walk, Alex stepped onto the small stage and took the microphone. "Tonight is special for many reasons," he began. "Authentic women. This is not just another collection. It is a manifesto on real beauty, on the value of recognizing ourselves in our authenticity. And none of this would have been possible without the extraordinary talent of my partner, Carmen Valdez." The audience applauded as Alex extended his hand to her, inviting her to join him on stage. With her legs trembling slightly, Carmen joined him to the applause. "Carmen is living proof that it's never too late to rediscover our value," Alex continued. "Her story has inspired thousands of women through social media, and now her talent is transforming the way we understand fashion." In the audience, Carmen spotted Hector. His expression had changed. There was no longer contempt or mockery in his eyes, but something that looked like admiration, regret. Alex handed her the microphone, and for a moment Carmen thought she wouldn't be able to speak. But then, looking at the diverse audience in front of her, the words flowed naturally. "6 months ago, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at me. She began. I had forgotten who I was, what I was passionate about, what made me feel alive. This collection was born from that journey of rediscovery, of learning to see myself through my own eyes, not through the eyes of others." Her voice remained steady as she continued. "Each of these garments is designed for real women who, like me, may have forgotten their own worth for a time. Women who deserve to feel beautiful, just as they are." Applause resounded through the hall when she finished her speech. Photographers captured the moment as Carmen and Alex waved together from the stage, their hands briefly intertwined in a gesture of complicity and celebration. After the show, during the cocktail party, Carmen was approached by journalists, potential clients, and followers who wanted to meet her in person. Hector remained at a distance, watching his wife shine in a world he didn't understand, a world where she had her own voice. When the event finally began to wind down, Carmen found herself alone for a moment in a quiet corner. She was exhausted, but elated, trying to process everything that had happened. A figure approached stealthily from behind. "You were magnificent," said Hector, offering her a glass of champagne. Everyone was impressed. "I'm impressed." Carmen accepted the glass cautiously, studying her husband. There was something different about him tonight, a kind of surrender in his usual posture of superiority. "Thank you," she replied simply. Hector took a step closer, slightly invading her personal space as he used to do. "You look beautiful, Carmen," he said softly. "More than beautiful, radiant. I can't remember the last time I saw you like this." Carmen kept her composure, even though her heart was pounding. 6 months ago, she would have desperately longed for these words. Now she felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. "That's because you never really saw me, Hector," she replied calmly. "You only saw what you wanted to see, someone who existed to serve you, to validate you." Hector's expression hardened for a moment. His old pride threatened to surface, but then seemed to fade away. "Maybe you're right," he admitted, surprising her. "Maybe I got so used to having you by my side that I forgot to appreciate you." Carmen took a sip of champagne, giving herself time to process this unexpected confession. "Why did you come today, Hector?" she finally asked. He looked her straight in the eye. "Because I want you back," he replied sincerely. "You've changed over the last few months. You've grown distant from me, and I've realized that I don't want to lose you." The words hung between them, laden with history, pain, and possibilities. Before Carmen could respond, Alex approached, his expression slightly tense at the sight of Hector. "Carmen, the local newspaper wants to do a quick interview with us," he said, looking alternately at the husband and wife. "If you're available, of course." She nodded gratefully for the interruption. "Excuse me, Hector. I have to take care of this." She walked away with Alex, feeling her husband's gaze fixed on her back. "Everything okay?" Alex asked quietly as they walked. It seemed like an intense conversation. Carmen sighed deeply. "Hector says he wants me back," she replied honestly. "After 20 years of treating me like a piece of furniture, now that others value my talent, he suddenly wants me back." Alex looked at her with a mixture of concern and something else, something that seemed like restrained hope. "And what do you want, Carmen?" he asked gently. She paused for a moment, looking back, where Hector was still watching her, then forward, where journalists, cameras, and an uncertain future awaited her. "I want to be free," she finally replied. "Free to rediscover who I really am, without anyone's shadow over me." The interview passed in a blur of flashes and questions. When the event finally ended, well past midnight, Carmen found herself at the entrance to the convention center, hesitating between two paths to follow. Hector's car, waiting patiently for her on one side, or Alex's offer to take her home. At that crucial moment, Carmen made a decision that would change the course of her life forever. The night of the launch marked a turning point in Carmen's life. Under the stars of Austin, between two possible paths, she made the bravest decision of all, to choose herself. "I'm sorry, Hector," she said in a firm but calm voice. "I'll go on my own tonight. I need time to think." Her husband's expression hardened momentarily, but then he nodded with resignation. 20 years together had taught him to recognize when Carmen had truly made up her mind. "As you wish," he replied simply. "I'll wait for you at home." Alex, who had been watching from a distance, approached when Hector left. "Are you okay?" he asked with genuine concern. Carmen nodded, feeling a strange mixture of liberation and vertigo. "I need a taxi," she replied, "but I'm not going home tonight. Do you know of a hotel nearby?" 2 weeks after the successful launch, Carmen was settled in a small but cozy apartment in northern Austin. She had collected her personal belongings from the house she shared with Hector one afternoon while he was at work. It wasn't a permanent move, she told herself. It was a space to breathe, to think, to find herself. The success of Authentic Women had exceeded all expectations. Orders from all over the country were pouring in for Alex's brand, and his name was beginning to make waves in Mexican fashion circles. Her Instagram account now had over 50,000 followers, and she had received offers to give talks on female entrepreneurship and self-esteem. One sunny November morning, as Carmen was having coffee on the small terrace of her new temporary home, her phone rang. It was the coordinator of an important annual event that brought together the cream of Yucatan business. "Ms. Valdez, we would love for you to be our guest speaker at this year's gala," the woman explained. "Your story of personal and professional reinvention is exactly the kind of inspiration we want to offer." Carmen accepted the invitation, still surprised that others found value in her experience. After hanging up, She looked at the message that had come in during the call. It was from Hector. "We need to talk. I'd like us to try again. I miss you." She contemplated the message for a long time, remembering the night that changed everything, the humiliations, the years of contempt, but also the good times they had had in the beginning. With steady fingers, she replied, "I also think we need to talk. I'll see you at the business gala next Friday. I'll be there as a guest speaker." The night of the gala arrived with a mixture of nervousness and determination. The Hilton Austin Hotel in Austin sparkled with elegant decorations as the business elite of the peninsula gathered for the occasion. Carmen wore one of her own designs, a deep red dress that hugged her renewed figure with elegance and confidence. Upon entering the main hall, she was greeted with respect and admiration by people who would previously have barely noticed her as Hector Ramirez's wife. Now they recognized her in her own right, the designer Carmen Valdez, the woman who had inspired so many others with her transformation. Among the crowd, she spotted Hector's old friends, those who had been present on the night of the humiliation. Their expressions upon seeing her were a poem of surprise and admiration. Maricela approached, visibly impressed. "Carmen, you look spectacular," she said sincerely. "Everyone is talking about you and your collection." "Thank you, Maricela," Carmen replied with a serene smile. "Life takes many turns, doesn't it?" At that moment, the crowd seemed to part, and Hector appeared in front of her. He was wearing his best suit, but there was something different about him, a vulnerability, a nervousness that Carmen had never seen before. "You look beautiful," he said, approaching cautiously, as if afraid of being rejected. "Thank you," she replied simply. An awkward silence settled between them, until the event organizer approached to inform Carmen that it would soon be her turn to speak. She nodded and excused herself. "I have to get ready. We'll talk later." From the podium, under the bright lights, Carmen looked out at the audience, watching her expectantly. Among them was Hector, sitting next to his partners. There was also Alex, who had given her the opportunity to be reborn professionally and had shown her that she could be valued for her talent. And there were all those people who now saw her as a symbol of renewal and courage. "Good evening," she began in a clear voice. 8 months ago, I was at a dinner similar to this one, but under very different circumstances. Carmen told her story without unnecessary drama, but with brutal honesty. She spoke of public humiliation, of the exact moment when something inside her broke and then rebuilt itself stronger. She spoke of the slow recovery of her self-esteem, of the small steps she had taken toward her rebirth, the morning walks, the design course, the connection with other women through social media. "The biggest mistake I made," she said, looking directly at the audience, "was allowing the gaze of others to define my worth. I let hurtful words become my truth. I forgot who I was, what I was passionate about, what made me unique." From his seat, Hector looked at her with a mixture of conflicting emotions: pride, shame, regret, nostalgia. "I'm not here to point fingers or play the victim," Carmen continued. "I'm here to remind you, especially the women here, that it's never too late to rediscover our worth, to remember our dreams, to demand the respect we deserve." The applause was thunderous when she finished her speech. People who had never noticed her existence before now approached her to congratulate her, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. In the crowd, Hector waited patiently for his turn. When they finally stood face to face in a quiet corner of the room, words seemed hard to find. "I never imagined," he began, "the damage I caused you. Hearing you speak tonight was like seeing you for the first time." Carmen watched him, looking for the usual manipulation in his words, but found only genuine remorse. "I've missed you these past few weeks," Hector continued. "The house is empty without you. I'd like us to try again. I can change, Carmen. I understand now." She raised a hand gently to stop him. "I'm sure you mean it, Hector," she replied calmly, "and I appreciate the words. But what you don't understand is that it's not about you anymore. It's about me." Confusion spread across Hector's face. "What do you mean?" "For the first time in 20 years, I'm living on my own terms," Carmen explained. "I'm rediscovering who I am without anyone's shadow over me, and I need to continue that journey. Is it because of him? Hector asked, looking over at Alex talking with some guests. Are you with him now? Carmen shook her head. I'm with no one but myself, she replied firmly. And that's exactly what I need right now. Are you asking for a divorce? Hector's voice trembled slightly, something unheard of in him. I'm asking for time and space, Carmen clarified. To heal, to grow, to decide what I really want in my life. Our marriage may get a second chance, or it may not. But I'll make that decision when I'm ready, without pressure and without fear. Hector looked at her for a long moment, as if he were finally seeing the woman who had always been there, hidden under layers of submission and resignation. You look beautiful, he finally said. But this time it wasn't a comment on her radiant physical appearance. It's as if you've awakened. That's exactly what happened, Carmen confirmed with a small smile. I woke up. They said goodbye with a brief but respectful hug. Carmen knew that the path she had chosen would not be easy. Rebuilding a life from scratch never is. But as she walked across the room to where Alex was waiting for her with a warm smile, she felt a deep certainty. She would never again allow anyone to dictate her worth. 3 months later, Carmen signed the contract for her own design line within the Authentica brand. Her temporary apartment had become a permanent home, decorated with her sketches and filled with the creative energy that had always been a part of her. She and Hector had occasional conversations that were more honest and respectful than in all their years of marriage. He was in therapy, facing his own demons and destructive patterns. Carmen wished him well, but no longer from a place of dependence or need. Her Instagram account now brought together more than 200,000 women who found inspiration in her story. Rebirth at any age had become her central message, and she would soon publish a book recounting her entire experience. One afternoon, as she watched the sunset from her terrace, Carmen remembered that night that changed everything, the cruel words that had acted as a catalyst for her transformation. That one is only good for washing clothes and cooking, old and ugly as she is. It's a blessing she's still with me. She smiled serenely. Those words that had once destroyed her now seemed distant, as if they belonged to another life, to another woman. The humiliation had become the first step toward her liberation. Her phone rang with a message from Alex. Ready for our celebration dinner? I'll pick you up in an hour, Carmen replied affirmatively. Her relationship with Alex had blossomed slowly, built on mutual respect and genuine admiration. She didn't know where the future would take them, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of the future. It was a promise, a blank canvas waiting to be painted with her own colors, her own terms, her own rediscovered courage. As she got ready for the evening, Carmen paused for a moment in front of the mirror. The woman staring back at her was no longer a stranger. She was Carmen in all her authenticity, with her scars and her strength, her talent and her courage. Thank you, she whispered to her reflection, thanking that broken version of herself who had found the courage to say, never again. The courage she had discovered was not in the admiration of others, nor in professional success, nor even in the renewed love she felt for herself. It was in the unshakable certainty that no matter what happened, she would never forget who she really was again.